Complete Works of Swami Vivekananda, Volume 1, Section 4, The Hindu Religion. My religion is to learn. I read my Bible better in the light of your Bible, and the dark prophecies of my religion become brighter when I compare with those of your prophets. Truth has always been universal. If I alone were to have 6 fingers on my hand, while all of you had only 5, you would not think that my hand was the true instant of nature, but rather that it was abnormal and diseased. Just so with religion. If one creed alone were to be true and all others untrue, you would have the right to say that religion was diseased. If one religion is true, all the other religion must be true. Thus, the Hindu religion is your property and as well as mine. Of the 290 million of people inhabiting India, only 2 millions are Christians, 60 millions Mohammedans, and all the rest are Hindus. The Hindus found their creed upon the ancient Vedas, the word derived from vid, to that is to know. There are a series of books which, to our mind, contain the essence of all religion, but we do not think they alone contain the truth. They teach us the immorality of the soul. In every country, in every human breast, there is a natural desire to find a stable equilibrium, some things that does not change. We cannot find it in the nature, for all the universe is not nothing but an infinite mass of changes. But to infer from that that nothing unchanging exists is to fall into the error of the southern school of Buddhist and the Charav- Charvakas, which later believed that all is matter and nothing mind, that all religion is a cheat and morality and goodness useless superstitions. The Vedant philosophy teaches that the man is not bound by his 5 senses. They only know the present and neither the future nor the past. But as the present signifies both past and future, all the three are only this demarcations of time. The present also would be unknown if it were not for something about the senses, something independent of time, which unifies the past and future in the present. But what is independent? What is independent? Not our body, for it depends upon outward conditions, nor our mind, because the thought of which is it is composed our cause. It is our soul, and the Vedanta says that the whole world is a mixture of independence and dependence, of freedom and slavery, but through it all shines the soul independent, immortal, pure, perfect, and holy. For if it is independent, it cannot perish, as that is but a change and depends upon the conditions. If independent, it must be perfect. For perfection, its gain but a condition, and therefore dependent. And this immortal, and perfect soul must be the same in the highest God as well as in the humble man. The difference between them being only in the degree in which the soul manifests itself. But why should the soul take to itself a body? For the same reason that I take a looking glass to see myself. Thus, in the body, the soul is reflected. The soul is God, and thus human being has a perfect divinity within himself, and each one must show this divinity sooner or later. If I am in the dark room, no amount of protestation protestation will make it any better or brighter. I must light a match. Just so no amount of grumbling and wailing will make our imperfect body more perfect. But the Vedanta teaches call forth your soul, show your divinity, teach your children that they are divine, that religion is the positive something and not a negative nonsense, that it is not subjection to grounds when under oppressions but expansions and manifestation. Every religion has it that man's present and future are modified by the past, and that the present is but the effect of the past. How it is, or how is it? Then that every child is born with an experience that cannot be counted for by hereditary transmission. How is it that one is born of good parents, receiving good education, and becomes a good man, while another comes from the best-sorted parents and ends up on the gallows? How do you explain this inequality without implicating God? Why should a merciful father set his child in such condition which must bring forth misery? It is no explanation to say God will make admin later on. God has no blood money. Then, too, what becomes of my liberty if this is my first birth coming into this world? Without the experience of the former life, my independence would be gone. Foreign path would be marked out by the experience of others. If I cannot be the maker of my own fortune, then I am not free. I take upon myself the blame for the misery of this existence and say I will unmake the evil I have done in another existence. This then is our philosophy of the migration of the soul. We come into this life with the experience of another, and the fortune or misfortune of this existence is the result of our act in the former existence, always becoming better till at last perfection is reached. We believe in God, the Father of the universe, infinite, omnipotent. But if our soul at last becomes perfect, it also must become infinite. But there is no room for two infinite unconditional beings, and hence we believe in the personal God, and we ourselves are He. These are the three stages which every religion has taken. First, we see God in the far beyond. Then we come nearer to Him and give Him omnipresence so that we live in Him. And at last, we recognize that we are He. The idea of an objective God is not untrue. In fact, every idea of God and hence every religion is true, as each is but the different stage in the journey, the aim of which is the perfect conception of the Vedas. Hence, too, we not only tolerate, but we Hindus accept every religion. Preparing in mosque of the Mohammedans, worshipping before the fire of the Zoroastrians, and kneeling before the cross of the Christian, knowing that all the religions, from the lowest fetishism to the highest absolutism, mean so many attempts of the human soul to grasp and realize the infinity, each determined by the condition of its birth and occasions, and each of them marking a stage of progress. We gather all these flowers and bind them with the twine of love, making a wonderful bouquet of worship. If I am God, then my soul is a temple of the highest, and my every motion should be worshipped. Love for love's sake, duty for duty's sake, without hope of reward or fear of punishment. Thus, my religion means expansion, and expansion means realization and perception in the higher sense. No mumbling words or genuflections. Man is to become divine, realizing the divine more and more from day to day in an endless progress. Next chapter. What is religion? A huge locomotive has rushed on over the line, and a small worm that was creeping upon one of the rails saved its life by crawling out of the path of the locomotion. At this little worm, so insignificant that it can be crushed in the moment. Is the living something, while this locomotion, so huge, so immense, is only an engine, a machine? You say the one has life and the other is only dead matter, and all its power and strength are speed are only those of the dead machine and a mechanical contrivancy. At the poor little worm which moved upon the rail, and which the least touch of the engine would have deprived of its life, is a majestic being compared to other huge locomotives. It is a small part of infinite, and therefore it is greater than the powerful engine. Why should that be so? How do we know the living from dead? The machine mechanically perform all the movements its maker made it to perform. Its movements are not those of life. How can we make the distinction between the living and the dead then? In the living there is freedom, there is intelligence. In the dead all is bound and no freedom is possible because there is no intelligence. This freedom that distinguishes us from mere machine is what we are all striving for. To be more free in the is the goal of all our efforts. For only in perfect freedom can there be perfection. This effort to attain freedom underlies all forms of worship, whether we know it or not. If we were to examine the various sort of worships all over the world, we would see that the rudest of the mankind are worshipping ghosts, demons, and spirit of their forefathers. Serpent worship of tribal gods, and the worship of the departed ones. Why do they do this? Because they feel that in some unknown way they bring are greater, more powerful than themselves and limit their freedom. They therefore seek to propitiate and propitiate these beings in order to prevent them from molesting them. In other words, to get more freedom. They also seek to win favor from these superior beings to get by gift of the gods what ought to be earned by personal efforts. On the whole, this show that the world is expecting a miracle. These expectations never leaves us, and however we may try, we are all running after the miraculous and extraordinary. What is mind but that ceaseless inquiry into the meaning and mystic mystery of life? We may say that only uncultivated people are going after all these things. But the question still is there, why should it be so? Then Jews were always asking for the miracle. The Jews were asking for the miracle. The whole world has been asking for the same these thousands of years. There is again the universal dissatisfaction. We make an idea, but we have rushed only half the way after it. When we make a newer one, we struggle hard to attain to some goal and then discover we do not want it. This dissatisfaction we are having time after time, and what is there in the mind if there is to be only dissatisfaction? What is the meaning of the universal dissatisfaction? It is because freedom is every man's goal. He seeks it ever. Whole life is the struggle after it. The child rebels against law as soon as it is born. At first, its first utterance is a cry, a protest against the bondage in which it finds itself. This longing for freedom produces the idea of the being who is absolutely free. The concept of God is a fundamental element in the human constitution. In the Vedanta, Satchit Anand, that is existence Sat, existence Chit, knowledge Anand, bliss. Satchitanand is the highest concept of God possible to the mind. It is the essence of knowledge and is by its nature the essence of bliss. We have been stifling that inner voice long enough, seeking to follow law and quit the human nature. But there is that human instinct to rebel against nature's law. We may not understand what the meaning is, but there is an unconscious struggle of the human with the spiritual, of the lower with the higher mind. and the struggle attempts to perceive one's separate life, what we call our individuality. Even hell stand out with this miraculous fact that we are born rebel and first fact of life. The inrushing of life itself. Against this we rebel and cry out. No law for us. As long as we obey the laws, we are like machines and on goes the universe and we cannot break it. Laws become man's nature. The first inking of life on this or its higher level is in seeing this struggle within us to break freedom is the song freedom is the song of the soul. Bondage, alas, to be bound in nature seems its fate. Why should there be serpent or ghost or demon worship and all these various creeds and forms for having miracles? Why do we say that there is life? There is been it in anything. There must be the meaning in all the searches. This endeavor to understand life, to explain being, it is not meaningless and vain. It is man's ceaseless endeavor to become free. The knowledge which we know, call science, has been struggling for thousands of years in its attempt to gain freedom. People ask for freedom, yet there is no freedom in nature. It is all law. Still, the struggle that goes on. Nay, the whole of the nature, from the very sun to the atoms, is under law, and even for men there is no freedom. But we cannot believe it. We have been studying laws for the beginning, and yet cannot, nay, I will not believe that man is under law. The soul cries ever, freedom, O freedom. With the conception of God as a perfectly free being, man cannot rest eternally in this bondage. Higher, higher he must go, and unless the struggle where for himself he would think is to serve, man says to himself, I am a born slave, I am bound. Nevertheless, there is a being who is not bound by nature, he is free and the master of nature. The concept of God, therefore, is an essential and has fundamental a part of mind has its the idea of bondage. Both are the outcome of the idea of freedom. There cannot be life even in the plant without the idea of freedom. In the plant or in the worm, life has to rise to the individual concept. It is there unconsciously working the plant living its life to preserve the variety principle or form, not nature. The idea of nature controlling every step onward overrules the idea of freedom. Onward goes the idea of the material world. Onward moves the idea of freedom. Still, the fight goes on. We are hearing about all the quarrels of grades and sects. At grades and sects are just proper, they must be there. The chain is lengthening and naturally the struggle increases. But there need to be no quarrels if we only knew that we are all striving to reach the same goal. The embodiment of the freedom, the master of nature, is what we call God. You cannot deny him. No, because you cannot move or live without the idea of freedom. Would you come here if you did not believe you were free? It is quite possible that the biologist can and will give some explanation of this perpetual effort to be free. Take all that for granted. Still, the idea of freedom is there. It is the fact as much as the other fact that you cannot apparently get over the fact of being under nature. Bondage and liberty, light and shadow, good and evil must be there. But the very fact of the bondage shows also this freedom hidden there. If one is a fact, the other is equally a fact. There must be this idea of freedom. While now we cannot see that this freedom this idea of bondage in uncultivated man is his struggle for freedom. Yet the idea of freedom is there. The bondage of sin, the impurities in the uncultivated savage is to his unconscious consciousness very small. For his nature is only a little higher than the animals. What he struggles against is the bondage of the physical nature, the lack of physical gratification. But out of this lower consciousness grows a broaden the higher conception of the mental and moral bondage and a longing for spiritual freedom. There we see the divine dimly shining through the veil of ignorance. The veil is very dense at first, and the light may be almost obscured, but it is there, ever pure and undimmed, the radiant fire of freedom and perfection. Man persono, personifies that. This as the ruler of the universe, the one free being. He does not yet know that the universe is all one, that the difference is only in degree, in the concept. The whole of the nature is the whole of the nature is the worship of God. Wherever there is life, there is a search for freedom, and the freedom is the same as God. Necessarily, this freedom gives us mastery over all nature, and it's impossible without knowledge. The more we are knowing, the more we are becoming master of nature. Mastery alone is making us strong, and if there be some being entirely free and master of nature, that being must have a perfect knowledge of nature, must be omnipresent and omniscient. Freedom must go hand in hand with this, and that being alone who has acquired this will be beyond nature. Blessed eternal peace arising from perfect freedom is the highest concept of religion underlying all the ideas of God in Vedanta. Absolutely free existence, not bound by anything, no change, no nature, nothing that can produce a change in him. This freedom is in you and in me and is the only free, real freedom. God is still established upon his own majestic, changeless self. You and I try to be one with him, but plant ourselves upon nature, upon the trifles of daily life, on money, on fame, on human love, and all these changing forms in nature which make for bondage. When nature shines upon what depends the shining upon God and not upon the sun, nor the moon, nor the star. Wherever anything shines, whether it is light in the sun or in our own consciousness, it is He. He shining, all shines after him. Now we have seen that this God is self evident, impersonal, omniscient, the knower, and the master of nature, the Lord of all. He is behind all worship, and it is being done according to him, whether we know it or not. I go one step further, that at which all marvels, that which we call evil, is his worship too. This too is the part of freedom. Knave, I will be terrible even and then, and tell you that when you are doing evil, the impulse behind is also that freedom. It may have been misguided and misled, but it was there, and there cannot be any life or any impulse unless that freedom be behind it. Freedom breathes in the throb of the universe. Unless there is unity at the universal heart, we cannot understand variety. Such is the conception of the Lord in the Upanishad. Sometimes it rises even higher and presenting to us an idea before which at first we stand against, that we are in the essence one with the God. He who is coloring in the wings of the butterfly and the blossom of the rosebud, in the power is the power that is in the plant and in the butterfly. Who he who gives us life in the power within us. Out of his fire comes life, and the rest death is also his power. He whose shadow is death, his shadow is immorality also. Take still higher conception. See how we are flying like hunted hares from all that is terrible, and like them, hiding our heads and thinking we are safe. See how the whole world is flying from everything terrible. Once, when I was in Varanasi, I was passing through a place where there was a large tank of water on one side and a high wall on the other. It was in the grounds where there were many monkeys. The monkeys of Varanasi are huge brutes and are sometimes surly. They now took it into their heads not to allow me to pass through their streets. So they hold and shrinked and clutched at my feet as I passed. As they pressed closer, I began to run, but the faster I ran, the faster came the monkey, and they began to bite at me. It seemed impossible to escape, but just then I met a stranger who called out to me, "Face the brutes." I turned and faced the monkeys, and they fell back and finally fled. That is a lesson for all life. Face the terrible, face it boldly, like the monkeys. The hardship of life fall back when we cease to flee before them. If we are ever to gain freedom, it must be by conquering nature, never by running away. Coward never win victories. We have to fight fear and troubles and ignorance if we expect them to flee before us. What is that? What are terrors? Do you not see the Lord's face in them? Fly from evil and terror and misery, and they will follow you. Face them, and they will flee. The whole world worship ease and pleasure, and very few dare to worship that which is painful. To rise above both is the idea of freedom. Unless man passes through this gate, he cannot be free. We all have to face this. We strive to worship Lord, but the body rises between nature rises between him and us and blinds our vision. We must learn how to worship and love Him in the thunderbolt, in shame, in sorrow, in sin. All the world has ever been preaching the God of virtues. I preach a God of virtue and a God of sin in one. Take Him if you dare. That is the one way to salvation. Then alone will come to us the truth, ultimate, which comes from the idea of oneness. Then will be lost the idea that one greater than another. The nearer we approach the law of freedom, the more we shall come under the Lord, and troubles will vanish. Then we shall not differentiate the door of hell from the gate of heaven, nor differentiate between men and say, I am greater than any being in the universe, until we see nothing in the world but the Lord Himself. All these evils will beset us, and we shall make all these distinctions, because it is only in the Lord, in the Spirit, and we are all one. And until we see God everywhere, this unity will not exist for us. Two birds, two birds of beautiful plumage, inseparable companions, sat upon the same tree, one on the top and one below. The beautiful bird below was eating the fruits of the tree, sweet and bitter. One moment a sweet one and the bitter one. The moment he ate the bitter fruit, he was sorry, but after a while he ate another, and when it too was bitter, he looked up and saw the other birds who ate neither the sweet nor bitter, but was calm and majestic, emerged in his own glory, and then the poor lower bird forgot and went on eating the sweet and bitter fruits again, until at last he ate one that was extremely bitter, and then he stopped again, and once more looked up at the glorious bird above. Then he came nearer and nearer to the other bird, and when he had come near enough, rays of light shone upon him and enveloped him, and he saw he was transformed into the higher bird. He became calm, majestic, free, and found that there had been but one bird all the time on the tree. The lower bird was but the reflection of the one above. So we are in the reality one with the Lord, but the reflection makes us seem many, as when the one sun reflects in the million dewdrops and seems a million tiny suns. The reflection must vanish if We are to identify ourselves with our real nature, which is divine. The universe itself can never be the limit of of our satisfaction. That is why the miser gather more and more money. That is why the robber robs, the sinner sins. That is why you are learning philosophy. All have one purpose. There is no other purpose in life save to reach this freedom. Consciously or unconsciously, we are all striving for perfection. Every being must attend to it. The man who is grouping through sin, through misery, the man who is choosing the path through hells, will reach it, but it will take time. We cannot save them. Some hard some hard knocks on his head will help him to turn to the Lord. The path of virtues, purity, unselfishness, spirituality becomes known at last, and what all are doing unconsciously, we are trying to do consciously. The idea is expressed by Saint Paul, the God that you ignorantly worship. How him declare, I up unto you. This is the lesson for the whole world to learn. What have these philosophies and the theories of natures to do, if not to help us to attain to this one goal in life? Let us come to that consciousness of the identity of the everything, and let man see himself in everything. Let us be no more the worshipper of creeds or sects with small limited notions of God, but see him in everything in the universe. If you are knowers of God, you will you will everywhere find the same worship as in your own heart. Get rid in the first place of all these limited ideas and see God in every person, working through all the hands, walking through all fates, and eating through every mouth. In every being he lives, through all minds he thinks. He is self evident, nearer unto us than ourselves. It to know this is religion, is faith, and many is and may it please the Lord to give us this faith. When we shall see feel that alone, or once feel that once we shall be immortal. We are physically immortal, even one with the universe. So long as there is one that breathes throughout the universe, I live in that one. I am not this limited little being. I am a universal. I am the life of all the sons of the past. I am the soul of Buddha, of Jesus, of Mohammedan. I am the soul of the teacher. And I am all the robbers that robbed and all the murderers that were hanged. I am the universal. Stand up there. Then, this is the highest worship. You are one with the universe. That only is humility, not crawling upon all fours and calling yourself a sinner. That is the highest evolution when this will of differentiation is tore off. The highest creed of oneness, I am so and so, is a limited idea, not true of the real I. I am the universal stand up that and ever worship the highest through the highest form. For God is spirit and should be worshipped in spirit and is in truth. Through low form of worship, man's material thoughts rise to spiritual worship and the universal infinite. One is at the last worship in and through the spirit. That which is limited is material. The spirit alone is infinite. God is spirit. It's infinite. Man is spirit, and therefore infinite and the infinite alone can worship the infinite. We will worship the infinite. That is the highest spiritual worship. The grandeur of realization, these ideas, how difficult it is. I theorize, talk, philosophies, and next moment something comes against me and I unconsciously become angry. I forget there is anything in the universe but this little limited self. I forget to say, I am The spirit. What is this trifle to me? I am spirit. I forget it is all myself playing. I forget God. I forget freedom. Sharp as the blade of the razor, long and difficult and hard to cross, is the way of freedom. The sages have declared this again and again. Yet do not let this weakness and failures blind you or bind you. The Upanishad says, the Upanishad have declared, arise, awake, and stop not until the goal is reached. We will then certainly cross the path, sharp as it is like a razor, and long and distant and difficult though it be. Man becomes a master of God and demons. No one is to blame for our miseries but ourselves. Do you think there is only a dark cup of poison if man goes to look for nectar? The nectar is there and is for every man who strives to reach it. The Lord Himself tells us, give up all these paths and struggles. Do thou take refuge in me. I will take thee to the other shore. Be not afraid. We hear that from all the scriptures of the world that comes to us. The same voice teaches us to say, Thy will be done upon earth as it is in heaven. For thin is the kingdom Him is the kingdom and the power and the glory. It is difficult, all very difficult. I say to myself, this moment I will take refuge in Thy, O Lord. Unto Thy love I will sacrifice all, and on Thy altar I will place all that is good and virtuous. My sins, my sorrows, my actions, my good and evil, I will offer up to Thy. Do Thou take them, and I will never forget. One moment I say, Thy will be done, and the next moment something comes to try me, and I spring up in the rage. The goal of all religion is the same, but the language of the teachers differs. The attempt is to kill the false, that is the I, so that the real I, the Lord, will read. I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Say the Hebrew scripture. God must be there all alone. We must say, not I, but thou. And then we should give up everything but the Lord. He and He alone should reign. Perhaps we struggle hard, and at the next moment our feet slip, and then we try to stretch out our hands to Mother. We find we cannot stand alone. Life is infinite, one chapter of which is Thy will be done, and unless we realize all the chapters, we cannot realize the whole. Thy will be done every ever moment the traitor mind rebels against it, yet it must be said again and again if we are to conquer the lower self. We cannot solve the traitor and yet to saved, yet be saved. There is salvation for all except the traitor, and we stand condemned as traitors, traitors against our own self, against the majesty of Mother, when we refuse to obey the voice of our higher self. Come, what will we must give our bodies and minds up to the supreme will. Well, has it been said by the Hindu philosophers, if man says twice, Thy will be done, he commits sins. Thy will be done. What more is needed? Why say it twice? What is good in it? No more shall we take it back. What is good is good. Thy will be done on earth as it is in the heaven. For Thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory for every evermore.